The holographic display flickered in the dim command center of the Vraxian flagship, casting eerie blue shadows across Commander Zethkar's scaled face. Around the circular table sat the surviving officers of the Third Fleet, their expressions a mixture of exhaustion and disbelief. The battle for Kepler 442b had ended 3 solar cycles ago, and the cost had been devastating. "Replay the engagement footage again," Zethkar ordered, his clawed hand trembling slightly as he gestured toward the hologram. The tactical display bloomed to life, showing the lush green world of Kepler 442b rotating peacefully. Then came the markers: 800 Vraxian shock troops, 47 armored walkers, and 12 gunships. The invasion force had been more than sufficient for a standard planetary reconnaissance. Intelligence had suggested minimal resistance, a small human settlement, perhaps a research outpost. What they encountered instead had defied all projections. Sub-Commander Rylax, her crimson scales dulled by fatigue, leaned forward. "We detected them immediately upon landing. Thermal signatures indicated only 12 hostiles. 12. She paused, mandibles clicking nervously. Standard protocol suggested a 3-hour engagement maximum. The hologram showed the Vraxian forces advancing through dense jungle terrain. Then the first ambush erupted. The footage captured in horrifying detail how a massive tree, rigged with some form of primitive explosive, had collapsed onto the forward column, crushing 2 walkers instantly. What followed was chaos. "They used the environment as a weapon," Tactical Officer Mornesh reported, his voice hollow. "Every natural feature became a trap. The humans had studied this terrain for months, possibly years. They knew every ravine, every river crossing, every choke point." The hologram replayed the moment when Vraxian troops pursued what appeared to be a retreating enemy into a narrow canyon. Except the human hadn't been retreating. He'd been leading them. The canyon walls erupted with carefully placed charges, burying 200 soldiers under tons of rock. Zethkar's tail lashed in agitation. 12 humans. 12. "They moved like shadows," Rylax continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "Our thermal scanners would lock onto a position, but by the time our forces arrived, the humans had already relocated. They used mud to mask their heat signatures, local vegetation for camouflage, and crude but effective communication methods that our signal interceptors couldn't decode." The display showed grainy footage from a gunship's camera. A lone human figure, face painted with dark stripes, had stood in a clearing, clearly visible. When the gunship descended to engage, the forest floor beneath it collapsed. Another trap, concealing a pit filled with sharpened stakes and incendiary materials. The craft had plummeted into the inferno, its crew lost instantly. "They sacrificed nothing," Mornesh added, manipulating the hologram to show different engagement points. "Every confrontation was calculated. Every trap was precisely positioned. They turned our numerical superiority into a liability, forcing us to spread our forces across impossible terrain." The most damaging engagement came on the 3rd day. Exhausted and demoralized, the Vraxian forces had established a defensive perimeter near what their scanners indicated was the human base, a small cluster of prefabricated structures near a river. 200 troops had advanced under heavy covering fire from the remaining walkers. The structures were empty, decoys. The real attack came from behind. The humans had circled through terrain the Vraxians had deemed impassable, a swamp filled with toxic flora that burned Vraxian flesh on contact. The humans had coated themselves in a neutralizing agent derived from local plants and waded through the mire for hours to achieve surprise. Their assault was devastating. Precision strikes on walker power cores, coordinated flanking maneuvers, and the use of captured Vraxian weapons turned the tide in minutes. When reinforcements arrived, the humans had already vanished back into the jungle, leaving only carnage behind. "We lost 643 soldiers," Zethkar said quietly, staring at the casualty report. 31 walkers destroyed or disabled. 8 gunships lost, against 12 humans who weren't even soldiers. "Reconnaissance specialists," Rylax corrected, bringing up a translated human document recovered from the abandoned base. The unit designation was Recon Team 7 Pathfinder Division. Their mission brief indicated they were conducting geological surveys and ecological assessments. "They were scientists, Commander. Scientists with basic military training for self-defense." The command center fell silent. The implications were staggering. Mornesh's claws tapped nervously against the table. If this is what their reconnaissance teams are capable of, what are their actual combat forces like? Zethkar pulled up another display, recent intelligence reports from the Galactic Council. Humanity had only joined the interstellar community 18 standard years ago. They were considered a minor species, barely worth noting in the grand political schemes of the galaxy. Most species viewed them as physically weak, technologically primitive, and strategically naive. But these reports told a different story. Humans evolved on a death world, a planet where nearly everything was designed to kill them. They had clawed their way to the top of their food chain through ingenuity, adaptability, and sheer stubborn refusal to die. They called it evolution. Other species called it insanity. Their entire military doctrine is built around asymmetric warfare, Zethkar realized, scrolling through captured human tactical manuals. They don't fight fair because fair fighting is inefficient. They exploit every advantage, adapt to every situation, and refuse to acknowledge defeat even when victory seems impossible. Rylax brought up casualty estimates from human military history. In their own wars, they've survived conflicts that would have caused other species to go extinct. They call them world wars. They fought themselves with nuclear weapons and still managed to rebuild. Twice. And we just gave them a reason to notice us, Mornesh said grimly. The hologram shifted to show real-time intelligence. 3 human warships had entered the system. Not colony ships, not transports, warships. The lead vessel transmitted a simple message in perfectly accented Vraxian. Recon Team 7 has been secured. We'll be leaving now. Do not follow. Zethkar stared at the retreating human ships, understanding dawning like a cold sunrise. The Vraxian Empire had survived for 3,000 years through overwhelming force and technological superiority. They had never encountered a species that could turn disadvantage into victory, that could make 12 individuals feel like an army. Send word to High Command, Zethkar ordered, his voice heavy with the weight of revelation. Humanity is not to be engaged under any circumstances. Classify them as a Category Alpha threat. Category Alpha? Rylax questioned. That classification is reserved for species that pose existential threats to the Empire. Zethkar gestured toward the casualty reports, the tactical analyses, the footage of 12 humans dismantling an invasion force through cunning and will alone. Exactly, he said. If this is what their scouts can do, I don't want to meet their warriors. The human ships disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind a shaken Vraxian fleet and a fundamental shift in galactic understanding. Humanity had sent a message, though they hadn't intended to. Underestimate them at your peril. In the aftermath, one of the human reconnaissance team members would later write in his report, encountered hostile alien force, applied standard wilderness survival and evasion tactics. All team members returned safely. Would recommend bringing more insect repellent for future missions to jungle planets. It was the most terrifying after-action report the galaxy would never fully understand.